Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first session of our Leadership Chat series at the Journal of Science, Policy, and Governance. Thank you for joining us today. And also we want to thank STEMPeers for sponsoring this session. I'm Nicole Parker. I'm JSPG's Director of U.S. Outreach. And for all of you who may be new to JSPG, we're an open access, peer-reviewed publication dedicated to elevating students and postdocs and policy fellows and other young scholars in science in the technology and innovation policy and government debate worldwide. And so at our first session of the series, we have our wonderful CEO and managing publisher, Adriana Bankston, with us. Adriana, welcome.
Thank you, Nicole.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. So we have a few questions for you. And the first one to get us started is, what's your day job? And how did you get into this current role of science policy?
Sure. So first of all, I have to say that I'm here in a personal capacity, but in my day job, I'm a principal legislative analyst with the University of California system in DC. So we advocate for the UC system with Congress, the administration, and federal agencies. And my role is specifically responsible for legislative analysis and advocacy for federal policy impacting university research. So how did I get here? I obtained my PhD in biomedical sciences from Emory University in 2013. And during my postdoc, I realized that I wanted to leave academia and became very interested in how we train graduate students and postdocs for non-academic careers. So I looked for opportunities to empower trainees through various nonprofits. And one of them is Future of Research, where I worked on a postdoc salary project in 2016. And in this project, I was able to connect federal policy with academia for the first time. And after that, I decided to pursue the policy path. I became involved in organizations that support trainees for policy careers specifically and help them build necessary skills for these careers. And that's how I ended up with JSPG. And my professional transition into the field actually occurred through a policy and advocacy fellowship with the Society for Neuroscience in 2019. And I've now been with UC for about the past 2 years.
Nice. A lot of familiar things mentioned there. Future of Research is certainly a great organization, so our viewers should check it out when they have a chance. And also, it was great to hear about some of your fellowship opportunities, which I know our viewers will be interested in as well. So speaking of early career researchers, how can early career researchers really make an impact in science policy?
There are many ways in which they can impact the policymaking process. And I want to just use a few personal examples to illustrate these points. So one way, as I mentioned, Future of Research is through grassroots advocacy, as we had done with Future of Research, and we've been able to influence institutions to increase postdoc salaries. And we published some of this work as well. And this led to increased transparency in institutional data. So these publications can really help move your career forward. Another way is by organizing events that tell a story. For example, at UC, we organized a virtual briefing where graduate students and postdocs talked about pandemic impacts on their work and personal lives. And this was a very impactful way to make the case for research recovery funds. You can also impact policy by writing legislation or proposing amendments on issues that you care about. And in my case, this was focused on STEM workforce development and training, and I was able to contribute to the NSF for the Future Act earlier this year. And finally, of course, organizations like JSPG can help you hone the writing and communication skills that you need to succeed in policy careers and to make an impact in society.
Great. Yeah, that's wonderful. It sounds like you certainly were involved in a lot and had a lot of personal examples to speak to the ways early career researchers could get involved. And since we're here and, with our JSPG hats on right now, wondering if you could explain a little bit more how JSPG can help early career scholars kind of hone in on those research and writing skills and really advance their careers by actually publishing in the journal.
Yeah, so firstly, I'll say that publishing in JSPG gives the next generation an opportunity to make their ideas known on policy topics that are both timely and relevant, and to make their mark on the field by participating in policy debates. In addition to publications, we also elevate the authors through conferences and webinars, as well as our podcast, in order to help them broaden the reach of their published work. And being part of the JSPG editorial board is another opportunity for early career researchers to hone their research and writing skills by reading and editing articles on topics covering every corner of science and technology policy. To help prospective authors hone these skills, we also organize virtual writing workshops throughout the year in conjunction with our issues, where early career researchers can learn how to write policy memos and other types of write-ups from experts in the field, and can also practice their writing. And these experiences are really valuable for their professional development. And I think for many rising stars in policy, publishing in JSPG is a significant stepping stone for them into the field. So they're able to then influence the policymaking process in a number of different areas.
Nice, yeah, and just to make a couple of plugs, we always advertise our workshops and our webinars widely on our Twitter and our LinkedIn page. So, we do a really good job of sharing those opportunities. And so we hope that if you are interested in that, you'll take a look into that. And one more question based off your last answer, how often, if someone was interested in getting on this editorial board, is there a time where they should be looking out for that, or anyone that they should contact just in case?
Yeah, so you can apply every year. The applications will open early next year again. And you're welcome to contact our communications. And then any of us can help answer questions, as well as past editors would be happy to help talk about their experience.
Great, thank you for sharing that information, Adriana. So back to the questions. What do you see as like the current trends and hot topics in science policy today? Where is the world going?
Yeah, it's a big question. So I would say you always hear about American competitiveness. How do we compete on the global policy landscape? And this will continue to be important in the future, as well as thinking about ways that we collaborate with other countries and governments to address a number of broad topics in science technology policy. And of course, with the pandemic, it's clear that policy changes are needed in order to provide educational access and policy knowledge to our youth from all backgrounds, so they can see themselves as the next senator or even president. So education is a big topic. Of course, topics like climate change and environmental issues will continue to be on everyone's radar, as well as global warming continues, and this is an issue of broad concern. So I think we will see more cross collaborations internationally between countries to address global crises that no one government alone can address, such as the topics I mentioned. Now, if we think about this in a more granular fashion, I think there will be intersections between different policy areas, as we've seen with the pandemic, where biomedical scientists have teamed up with public health officials on joint projects related to pandemic impacts. And I think this has broken down some of the silos that exist in policy today. Another example is the growth of public interest technology, for example, which is an area that brings innovative product development to the forefront with a focus on the public. And along those lines, again, with the pandemic, technology policy has become a more popular area in the future, or will be in the future. And it really is not only just in terms of global technology use, but as well as the angle of equity and who has access to technology, especially in the pandemic. And speaking of equity, in fact, diversity, equity, and inclusion more broadly, I think will be part of the decisions that policymakers make in the future as we think more broadly about developing tools and resources that improve our society.
Yeah, no, those are all excellent points. And I think we all can attest to the fact that, this pandemic has changed everything. And so it makes a lot of sense that a lot of the shifts that we're going to see in the upcoming years are very much so in line with just things that we've learned over the past year or so. And also as the world becomes more diverse, as our country becomes more diverse, a lot of those points that you made make a lot of sense as far as like what's going to be important to policy members. And so as the CEO of the journal, we're just curious, what have you learned since you've been the CEO of JSPG? And then also, what are some of the most important skills for someone who's actually in your position?
Yeah, great question. Happy to talk about this. So I learned a lot of things. Can only cover a few here today, but I learned that it's really important to be passionate about the cause that you're representing, because running a business can be difficult if you don't really love what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to be both driven and focused on the direction that you want to follow, but also flexible at the same time, which is not an easy task. Also thinking about being willing to mentor others and really educate your staff, but also don't lose sight of the big picture and really prioritizing activities that will help you reach your goal. Because at the end of the day, you have limited time and you need to be able to focus on things that will move you forward. So in that sense, I think strategy and focus are important, but because we're a business and entrepreneurial and policy moves quickly, we have to be able to take advantage of opportunities that exist along the way that are interesting to us and we might want to contribute to. So that's sort of where the entrepreneurship comes in. And I think in a strategic sense, there is sort of this dual way to look at it. So it's important to understand the details of the business, but also be able to step back and have that 30,000 foot view at any given point to really see where you can go. And with this really comes innovation, thinking about where do we want to go, where the latest trends are, and keeping a constant pulse on where the field is going and anticipating sort of what the next big thing will be before it actually happens. And then thinking about how do we position the organization as a leader in that space as things are moving or even before. And then finally, because this has happened multiple times, probably every day since I started, you really have to be willing to go out of your comfort zone and make the best decisions that you can with limited information, which is a skill to learn. And of course, you might make some mistakes along the way, but I think you get better at it every day. So you just have to keep going.
Yeah, no, agree. And those are skills that are helpful in any sector. Like it doesn't matter what direction you go in, what field you're in. Have to be, ready to step out of our comfort zones in order to have any type of growth, really. And certainly we can't be afraid to make mistakes, because as we're learning, we're going to make mistakes, right? And the best lessons are learned, honestly, from making some mistakes. So thank you for that really thoughtful answer. I think a lot of our listeners and viewers will really appreciate those things that you mentioned. And so you've been in this role as CEO. You've learned a lot, obviously, since you started, but you've been in this role for 100 days now, officially. So one, congratulations for making it 100 days. But, where do you see JSPG going over the next decade? You talked a lot about the 30,000 foot view and strategizing. So how do you see it going?
Yeah, thank you for the congratulations. It's really been an honor to be in this role and lead the organization over the last 100 days. So as you know, we have now reached the 10-year anniversary of the journal. So part of the goal is for JSPG to become even more prominent than it already is in the international policy landscape. So of course, we've had a number of national and international partners over the years, and we're now sort of on the policy map, so to speak. But it's time to really step up our game and expand our level of partnerships, which is really the way that we operate and grow. So part of the strategy will be, we want to continue expanding internationally, of course, realizing that science policy is bigger than the US, and we've been more US centric, I would say. And so we really do want to expand in all aspects into other countries and work with organizations that are of early career researchers and larger groups in other countries, and also explore policy areas that we haven't yet talked about or explored in depth. And some of this goes back to my earlier point about anticipating future trends in policy that may be relevant in the years to come, and really being in that position to take advantage of what the next wave is going to be. And then I would say, in a more concrete fashion, going from this 30,000 view into what this looks like practically, we want JSPG to be the go-to place for early career researchers to publish their work on a broad range of policy topics, of course, from all over the world. Of course, this is our mission, but I think we can do more in thinking about what that looks like. Specifically for prospective and current authors, I think there are 3 areas to look at, and this sort of comes back full circle to the beginning of this conversation about what the journal is and what our mission is. So the first thing is, we want to find the best ways that we can train the next generation in science policy research and writing, and this comes back to the writing workshops. We're always looking for better ways to be more effective and make sure that they really learn these skills. We also want to develop more innovative ways to elevate their work in high-level venues and forums. So we've done conferences and a number of different panels, but again, this I think will only expand internationally to where we can really place our authors in a higher level forums. And then finally, and this is something that will take a lot of work, but I think it's really important for us to think about how we can empower the authors themselves to use the experience that they have with the journal and use that to positively impact society on policy issues that they care about. So this element of empowering, I think, will be part of the next step, the next few steps here. And then really thinking, we've been focusing a lot on the publications and growing as a journal, but now being at a phase where we're really thinking about beyond what we can do with the publication. So how do we increase our engagement and outreach to facilitate this in media outlets, in mainstream and sort of public engagement, other areas that we haven't looked at, and how do we really elevate the work that we have? Because we have a lot of really great work here that I think people don't necessarily know about, and putting it in front of the right people and just using the media more, I think will be a good direction to go. And ultimately, if we're looking at this in the long term, I think we want to create new leaders in the field that can really push the boundaries of policymaking into the 21st century, and utilizing JSPG as a platform to achieve this goal. And again, elevating their work in these high-level spaces and making sure that their idea and innovative ideas are really making it far, hopefully, into a number of different avenues.
Thank you for sharing that, Adriana. I know all of that sounds extremely exciting, and I hope our listeners are just as excited for the direction that JSPG can go in. And this all sounds really great and certainly empowering for our early career scholars that I know are very interested in what the journal does and are interested in submitting to the journal. And so I just wanted to take this time to see if you had any last words of wisdom or any other pieces of advice that you might want to share before we close out today.
I would say, I think the message that I would leave you with is that a lot of this professional and career development is really up to you. So, we can provide the platform for you to develop your skills, but as an early career researcher, I think it's important to take charge of your career and direction that you want to go in, and we're here to help you. And please reach out to us if we can help, and we're looking forward to hearing from you at our next edition.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you, Adriana, for all of your thought-provoking responses. I hope our listeners learned a lot from everything that you had to say. And I'm sure They are very interested in your journey into science policy and also interested in all the ways you described that they can actually interface with the journal. So thank you for sharing all that. So to our listeners, I hope you enjoyed this leadership chat. And we're going to continue to do this throughout the rest of the year. So please stay tuned for our next leadership chat that will be held in September. And we just want to thank you all for taking this time to join us today, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.